So last week we talked about non-doing. And along those lines, we talked about noticing the very initiation of a movement. So being able to inhibit old patterns and then noticing the very initiation, the moment before you actually move. So, for instance, if I were going to turn my head to that side, I could imagine turning my head to that side. And as soon as I do that, I already feel movement in my eyes and in the muscles in my neck. So I imagine turning my head to that side and back to center. And my eyes have moved. But I inhibited most of the movement. But I can sense and feel exactly how I would start that movement. And in fact, at that moment, the moment you begin to think about doing a movement, the moment you anticipate doing a movement, all the neurological information, or all the neurological pattern and information of the entire movement are present. So you're ready to jump into your habit. And that's why when we inhibit that, and why we notice how we start a movement, notice what would move first if I did it, notice what tenses first. That becomes a fantastic way to notice our habitual way of moving and possibly to find a way to experiment with doing something a little bit different. So if I imagine I'm going to turn my head to my left, and then I do it, I find that, in fact, the entire information for the whole pattern was there. So if I wanted to do something different, I could perhaps try doing that a little bit more easily, for instance. So last week we talked about an idea that is extremely helpful in exploring your movement, non-doing, and there are various aspects to that. But this week, let's explore another idea, and that is the idea of, in everything we do and all our movements that we're aware of, that we feel we need to improve, or in any aspect of our life, we can experiment with including more of ourselves. So, for instance, if I were going to type at a keyboard, I know that that action is going to include my fingers, hands, and wrists. And a lot of times we'll stop right there. And we don't include parts of ourselves that could really support the movement. So, what if I wanted to move my shoulders more freely? And so what we're going to do is we're going to stand over here against the wall and try a little movement. All right, so if you're like me and like many Americans who don't use your shoulders through a full range of motion all the time, you may notice that you are not as flexible in that area as you might be. And at times in life, certainly, we need to use our shoulders and use them fully. So if I were to stand here and touch the wall and begin to raise my arm up slowly, I'll notice that at some point it might get a little harder to do. Now already I've been able to notice my shoulder blade following this movement. My shoulder blade is turning a little bit, and then it's coming up, and then it's coming down as I lower my arm. So at some point you might find that this movement would get a little bit difficult. I feel a little tightness in the shoulder here. Maybe you feel a little, maybe you don't feel anything at this point, but at some point, you very well could notice that this movement gets a little bit difficult. So play with it a little. Our primary rule in doing these movement explorations is don't do anything that causes difficulty or pain. That's not the place where we begin to move more easily, more freely, and without pain. So let's go ahead and see if we can improve the way we move by using this idea, another idea, this idea of incorporating more of yourself into a movement. So we're going to sit back down here. And let's try something. Let's try a simple movement here. And go ahead and cross your arms and take hold of your shoulders. Right. And go ahead and bring your shoulders a little bit to one side and back to center. Now notice that you're really not moving your shoulders very much. They are moving in space, but what is moving? What do you feel in your sitting bones? Here I am kind of looking at you while I do it. I don't have to do that. Never do anything that's painful or difficult. Do this only in a comfortable range. And at some point here, I begin to feel a little bit restricted. So now I would like you to draw attention to the weight on your sitting bones. And could you now begin to intentionally bring your weight towards the side that you're moving to? So if I'm moving to my right, I bring my weight onto the right pelvis. Right? Okay. So obviously now we've incorporated the pelvis. We were turning the shoulders by using the torso, and now the movement has gotten a little bit bigger because we incorporated the shifting of weight on the pelvis. So if I am, go ahead and drop your arms and rest. If I am intentionally shifting the weight of my pelvis onto the right side, what am I doing with the left side? Is that following the movement? Take a few moments here. Cross your arms again. And this time turn to the other side. Only as far as is comfortable, because there's a limit. If you want to, you can look the other way, gently, gently. Or you could just play with moving your eyes to that side. The side away from the way you're turning. And rest. Now we'll make this a little bit bigger. But give yourself a moment. All right, cross your arms again. Now go ahead and cross them the other way and see how that feels. Turn this way. Turn this way. Notice how your weight is shifting in your pelvis now. Are you able to shift that weight more easily? Gently, gently. Cross your arms the other way again. Which way is easier for you? And do it gently. Now drop your hands, rest one more time, and we'll add another thing to this movement. So obviously we've been able to move our shoulders, not by moving our shoulders, but by moving the torso and the pelvis. So let's see if we can make this a little bit more practical. Cross your arms, and this time look kind of down, and then begin to look up as you move your weight to the right side of your pelvis and raise your elbows up. Now don't strain your head. You can look up with your eyes a little bit. Come back down. See how your breath cooperates with this. See how your breath is happy with this. Never do anything that's uncomfortable or painful. Go only as far as you can enjoy going. Now notice not only the shifting of the weight, but notice which side of your torso might be getting longer. And which side of your torso do you not notice any lengthening? Okay. Now bring the elbows up. Gently back down. Up. Now I'm going to go a little bit less. And a little bit less. All right. Let's go to the other side. Elbows up. And now this side for me feels quite a bit different. Gently, gently. Notice how your weight can be supported through the pelvis, and notice which side lengthens now. And we can bring the elbows up a little higher. Bring them up a little higher. So I have particularly noticed that one side of my one side of my torso has a little bit more difficulty lengthening than the other side. So I'm going to do that side a little bit more gently. And I'm going to really notice how my weight hangs out on the right in a supportive way. And I'm going to keep my weight on that right and bring this back down. And then the other side is a little bit easier. So that's the way I'm going to do the movement. So now let's go back against the wall and see what happens. All right, here we are back against the wall. Okay, arm up, and there was a place here where it got a little bit difficult last time. So let's imagine that we're sitting on the chair, or in this case standing on our feet, and we begin to look at the wall and turn the torso. So I'm going farther, but I'm not doing more with my shoulder. Look at the wall, and we turn the torso. And then I can just drop my arm, use my torso, and we come all the way around. Drop them. Okay, so use your torso enough that this becomes a very, very easy thing to do. And now, could you stand on the right as you raise the right arm and support through your torso so that you're really not straining your shoulder, but you're supporting yourself through the rest of yourself, through your core, through your spine, through your center, down to your feet. And now, without really any to do, and being very conscious of my shoulder joint itself, keeping that supported and happy. And now notice the difference between your right arm and your left arm. What's the right shoulder and the left shoulder? Can you notice any difference? Which one feels more competent and maybe more powerful? Now, could you go ahead and imagine doing the same thing with your left arm and and feeling the entire motion of helping with your torso, and feeling that motion even down into your feet. Take a moment to imagine that. You can close your eyes or you can leave them open. You can feel in your imagination the shifting of weight, the way the ribs move, the way the breath moves, and then go ahead and gently explore. You can shift over to that side. And to me, my left side is very different. You may find that to be the case. But the idea that we're talking about here today is incorporating more of yourself. Notice that we incorporated our core, but we also even incorporated the feet and the breath. Incorporating more of yourself into your movements. That is an idea worth exploring. So thank you very much for listening, and we've explored several ideas and principles and ways to practice exploring your movement, and I hope to go a little further with that in the future. And at this point, I'd really like your feedback. Was this helpful? Was this not helpful? What else would you like to discuss in the way of improving movement?